Israel launches its deadliest attack of the current conflict in the Middle East. Officials say at least 10 Palestinian women and children were killed in a Gaza refugee camp. Later, the Israeli army justified attacking a building where journalists were based.
Media organizations had their offices, but the primary purpose of that building is for the R&D, Research and Development Department of Hamas.
Meanwhile, pro-Palestinian demonstrators marched here and around the world calling for their governments to pressure Israel to back down. Also ahead, more testing and more vaccinations in the race to beat the spread of the Indian variant of COVID-19 and... two teams celebrating remarkable firsts tonight. Unbeaten Rangers lift the league trophy in Glasgow, and it's jubilation for Leicester after their first ever victory in the FA Cup final.
This is ITV News with Duncan Golestani.
Good evening. There were relatively few airstrikes by Israel on Gaza today, but those that did land took a terrible toll. At least 8 children were among 10 people who died in the bombing of a building housing refugees. Hamas militants fired rockets at Israel in return, but then Israeli planes targeted a tower block where several foreign media were based, razing it to the ground. The Associated Press, which was based there, said the world will know less about what is happening in Gaza as a result. This report from our global security editor Rohit Katru contains distressing images from the start.
Omar Hadidi is suffering, but at 6 months old, despite his tears, he doesn't yet know how painful today really was. His mother and 4 brothers were killed in an Israeli airstrike. He's the only survivor of an attack which killed a family he'll never remember. His father consoles him, but then he learns he has lost another child. Killed because of where he lived. Then a few hours later, a high-rise building was hit. Inside it were homes and the offices of media organisations, evacuated shortly beforehand. The international news network Al Jazeera had offices there. The airstrike shown live on air.
There we are, another strike on that tower. And the tower has come down.
Israel said Hamas had been using the tower too, but this is also where the American news organisation, the Associated Press, had its base. So one question now is how the US administration will respond. What justification is there for an airstrike against a high-rise building housing journalists, news organisations telling the truth?
AP and other media organizations had their offices, but the primary focus of that, the primary purpose of that building, is for the R&D, Research and Development Department of Hamas.
Earlier in Tel Aviv, we watched as a fresh barrage of rockets from Gaza was fired into Israel. Warning sirens sounded as dozens flew in above us. Israel's air defense system was deployed, but some rockets made impact. An Israeli man was killed. Tonight, President Biden told the Palestinian leader that Hamas must stop its rocket attacks on Israel. And to the Israeli Prime Minister, he said he was concerned about civilian casualties, but no breakthrough in the mediation and no change to the pace or the prospect of de-escalation. Rohit Katru, ITV News, Tel Aviv.
Here, tens of thousands of people turned out for an annual demonstration to show solidarity with the Palestinians.
Free free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Organisers said there were more than 100,000 people on the march to the Israeli embassy in London. Its leaders called for not only an end to the current violence, but also the end of Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands. And this was a global protest taking place in cities around the world. In Paris, police fired water cannon at protesters who were defying a lockdown ban on demonstrations. Marches were also held in other cities across France. Israeli flags were burned in Brussels, and there were further protests in Germany, Australia and America. Just days before COVID restrictions are relaxed across much of the UK, there have been football fans at Wembley and runners in a 5k race, all being allowed to test how the virus spreads in a return to normality. But the dark cloud on the horizon is the so-called Indian variant, spreading fast with a foothold in the northwest. Fears are growing that it could derail plans to lift almost all restrictions in England in June. Dan Rivers has the latest.
FA Cup Day, a busy Wembley and fans queuing in expectation. But this glimpse of normality is not all it seems. Today the crowd was less than a quarter of the stadium's capacity. Long after the pundits have assessed the football here, scientists will be analysing the footfall to see if events like this pose a risk. Go! There was a similar tentative return to running at Kempton Park as well today, a race which was also a giant experiment. One group running socially distanced, another without any such measures, to see if there was a difference in transmission rates.
We're collecting data across a range of different events, at Wembley, the Crucible, the O2 and here now today. We have cameras positioned around this site and we have members of staff making observations. And so we are just collecting data, making observations, seeing how people are performing throughout the day.
The study comes as concerns grow for hotspots like Bolton, where the rise of the so-called Indian variant of the virus has sped up in recent days. Door-to-door testing has started this weekend for some 12,000 households.
We have got COVID-19 circulating within our community and we really want to stop the increase in rates. We want to stop the transmission, and what we're doing is asking people to test.
A vaccine bus has been out, again trying to boost protection here, as the government warns the new variant does appear to be more transmissible.
It is spreading, but as I say, we, on the basis of current evidence, there's no evidence to suggest it evades the vaccine or that it leads to greater risk of death or severe illness. But we are still working on the extent to which it is more transmissible.
At the moment, plans to allow people back inside pubs and restaurants are going ahead on Monday, but experts are carefully monitoring the spread of the virus, which may jeopardise further easing of restrictions in June. Dan Rivers, ITV News.
Our political correspondent David Wood is here. David, is there any more clarity tonight on how the government is thinking about those restrictions and the lifting of them in June?
I'm told at the moment, at least, there are no changes to the current plans. But what there also isn't is any confidence that the ending of all restrictions in England planned for the 21st of June can go ahead. Of course, that's more than 5 weeks away. A lot can change in that time. But should that date's in the diary, if you like, for businesses like nightclubs, music venues, and the Culture Secretary tweeted those businesses today saying that he understands this is an anxious situation, but that we must accept a period of heightened vigilance with fast-moving variants. That comes as some scientists writing in tomorrow's papers are urging the Prime Minister to slow down on the roadmap. So pressure building on that side. Tory MPs don't want that, so pressure building on their side. Certainly one thing changing this weekend, far less hope, far more caution from the government.
David, thank you. In other news, British troops have seized a huge cache of weapons and equipment from terrorists in Mali. The UK task force of about 100 soldiers is supporting a UN peacekeeping mission in the North African nation. Rifles, ammunition and radios were confiscated from Islamist militants. And China has landed a spacecraft on Mars in a major boost to the country's space programme. The lander touched down today to the delight of scientists on the ground in Beijing. Its Zhurong rover is due to start exploring the planet in a few days. It will join the American rovers on Mars, Perseverance and Curiosity. Sport, and Scottish Premiership champions Rangers have completed their season unbeaten. It ended today with a 4-0 win over Aberdeen. Steven Gerrard's side finished the season on 102 points, the first time the club has earned more than 100 in one season in the Premiership. But despite pleas from the police and government to stay away due to COVID restrictions, thousands of Rangers fans gathered outside Glasgow's Ibrox Stadium. There appeared to be little social distancing as they celebrated their team's success. And finally, the FA Cup final is supposed to be the stuff of dreams, and for Leicester City tonight, it's a dream come true. Their win over Chelsea today featured a fabulous goal, last-minute drama and controversy. But in the end, history was made as Leicester raised the trophy for the first time ever. Chris Scudder reports now from Wembley.
If football's nothing without fans, here was the proof. And for the Leicester City supporters who had never won the FA Cup before, this was one of their greatest of days.
Wow, well, there's quite a noise. We haven't heard a noise like this for a long time.
Last year's FA Cup final had been played to empty stands. Now it was only around a quarter full, but 22,000, desperate to return, sounded like an army. Many a cup final has been won by a scrappy goal, but this wasn't one of them.
What a shot from Yuri Tielemans!
A spectacular strike from the Belgian Yuri Tielemans. It'll go down as one of the great cup final goals. It looked as though that would win the game until a dramatic finish.
And it's in!
With time running out, Chelsea thought they'd equalised through former Leicester player Ben Chilwell. Mayhem in the Chelsea ranks, then dismay when the goal was ruled out by VAR for a fractional offside. Chelsea hearts were broken, and Leicester, at the 5th time of asking in a cup final, finally had their prize.
So the Leicester fairy tale goes on. Premier League, now the FA Cup. But more than that, this was football's day when the people's game was reclaimed by the fans.
It's absolutely over the moon, love them all, fantastic day, amazing, so happy, one of the best days of my life.
The atmosphere was incredible.
The atmosphere was incredible, man. You know, it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
That's FA Cup magic.
FA Cup winners!
Chris Scudder, ITV News, Wembley.
And that is it. The weather forecast is next. But from all of us here on the Weekend News team, thank you for watching and a very good night.